Across America, 34% of students in 8th grade performed at or above the National Assessment for Educational Progress's proficiency levels in reading. In California alone, only 32.1% of students in 4th grade are at or above the NAEP's proficiency levels for reading. This statistic decreases for 8th graders, with only 29.8% meeting NAEP's proficiency levels. This raises the questions: what variables affect reading scores, and what can be done to improve these scores? An analysis of a national dataset of nearly 100,000 students across the United States found that access to printed material is the critical variable affecting reading acquisition. This study reports that the only behavior measure that correlates significantly with reading scores is the number of books in the home. So the answer is simple, right? Just increase the number of books in the homes of students and reading proficiency levels will increase. This is much easier said than done. While this study states that poverty levels have little to do with reading scores, there is a direct link between the poverty levels of families and access to books in the home. The U.S. Department of Education in 1996 reported that 61% of low-income families have no books at all in their homes for their children. While this figure has changed since the 90s, the same trend still holds true. Lower-income children have less access to books inside and outside of the home. This ultimately affects their future ability to meet reading proficiency levels. In a study conducted in 1990, 1993, and 2007 with children ages 3 to 6, it was found that across all 3 years, children from poorer families are less able to recognize their letters, count to 20, write their name, or read or pretend to read a book. The children of lower income families are more likely to be below reading proficiency than those of middle and high income families. One factor leading to this conclusion is the amount of time parents spend reading with their children. The average child growing up in a middle-class family has been exposed to 1,000 to 1,700 hours of one-on-one picture book reading. The average child growing up in a less economically stable family, in contrast, has only been exposed to 25 hours of one-on-one reading. This difference in time that parents spend reading to children ultimately affects the child's ability to meet state and federal reading standards. One reason why there is such a massive disparity could be attributed to the significant difference between access to reading materials in different income bracket neighborhoods. In 2001, 4 different neighborhoods were examined: 2 low-income neighborhoods and 2 middle-income. Children in the middle-income neighborhoods had multiple opportunities to use, observe, and purchase books, approximately 13 titles per child. Few opportunities were available for low-income children, who, in contrast, had approximately 1 title per 300 children. This discrepancy between children of low-income families and middle and upper-class families' access to books emphasizes the fact that children from low-income families simply do not have the same access and the same privileges. In low-income neighborhoods, public libraries are, on average, open for fewer hours when compared to the public library hours of middle-income neighborhoods. In Sacramento, we see this happening. Within higher-income neighborhoods such as Land Park, The Pocket, and downtown, there are more libraries, making middle and high-income families access to libraries much more accessible, whereas lower-income neighborhoods have access to fewer libraries, spread out further than in high-income neighborhoods, decreasing the accessibility of public libraries. Not only do poor children have fewer books in their homes, but they also live in communities with fewer books in the classrooms, schools, and public libraries. An important change that could alter children's access to books throughout the school year would be an investment in elementary and middle school libraries. With weekly visits to the library where students could take home 1 book a week to read with their families, this would be a way to increase low-income students' access to books and help close the income reading gap. Elementary school libraries, however, continue to be at the bottom of school budgets. School libraries are often the first to go as school districts slash budgets. The principal at Matsuyama Elementary School in the Sacramento City Unified School District said that our library is open every day, and we do use some categorical money to fund a part-time library media tech to keep it up to date and organized. Most classrooms have a library parent that does the check-out and check-in of books. The schools whose libraries are opened are funded by allocating money from different parts of the budget, something not all schools can afford to do. SUSD has continually excluded elementary school librarians from budgets, relying on elementary schools to use parent or community volunteers or finding the money elsewhere in the budget. This allows schools in higher income neighborhoods to have access to librarians more often than those in low income schools, as parent volunteers and family donations are more common in higher income schools. Throughout SUSD elementary schools, teachers have been passionate about their frustration over the lack of libraries for their students. Schools such as Tahoe Elementary School use their school library as a storage room, as students are not allowed to enter or get books with their class. Other elementary schools, such as Sutterville Elementary School, have their libraries open, but only as COVID-19 testing rooms for students and faculty. This is incredibly frustrating to teachers and admin, as they have expressed their wishes to keep libraries open for students, yet they have an inability to do so. In a study conducted by Newman in 2000, it was concluded that the most successful way to improve the reading achievement of low-income children is to increase their access to print. This is exactly what needs to be done. Every elementary school should have allocated money for a fully functional and running school library, in which students can check out a book once a week. This would increase the students' access to books and improve their reading scores. This is perhaps wishful thinking. Time and time again, school budgets ignore elementary school libraries. It is only once this ignorant oversight has been corrected that we may begin to see improvements within the reading scores of children throughout this country.